You ever get one of those calls where, the second you hear the other person's voice, you just know something's wrong? Not someone's in the hospital wrong. No, this was worse. This was the kind of quiet that crawls down your spine. The kind of calm you hear from someone who's already made a decision that's going to burn your world down and isn't sorry about it. I was sitting at a beachside cafe in Belize. I had finally taken a real vacation, my first in damn near a decade. $2 million farm under my belt, no debt, not a single mortgage in sight. I was 42, grizzled from years of work, but free. Or so I thought. I saw her name flash on my phone. Cynthia, my wife of 7 years. Beautiful, ambitious, with eyes that could either melt you or gut you depending on the day. Lately, she'd been cold, aloof even, but I chalked it up to stress. That was my first mistake. Hey, babe, I answered, squinting against the sun, half expecting some honeyed excuse about how much she missed me. Instead, her voice cut through the line like a rusted blade. I sold the farm. My heart stopped. You what? I sold it, she repeated, calmly, like we were talking about buying socks. The whole 200 acres. Signed the papers this morning. Silence. And then, I used the money for Marcus's startup. He needs it more than you do. I blinked. Marcus. Her business coach. The one she met during some wellness seminar last year. The same guy who posted shirtless, motivational selfies on Instagram while spouting nonsense like, "Success is in your aura." I stood up, chair screeching back. You sold the farm? Cynthia, that land's been in my family since 1952. She had the audacity to chuckle. Don't be dramatic. We both know you weren't doing anything special with it. Marcus has a vision, ew. I hung up. Didn't say another word. Didn't scream. Didn't threaten. Just canceled every plan, every reservation, and every trace of peace I thought I had earned. I was on the next flight back, jaw clenched so tight I nearly cracked a molar. But here's the thing about betrayal. Sometimes, it doesn't break you. Sometimes, it sharpens you. Like a whetstone against old steel. I didn't even tell her I was coming back. I didn't need a confrontation. I needed answers. And maybe, just maybe, I needed a little poetic justice. When I finally pulled up the gravel drive to our gate, my gate, I expected to see empty fields, some developer's sold sign, maybe even Marcus himself, prancing around like a tech messiah. But instead, I found something that made me laugh. Genuinely, deeply laugh. Because the farm Cynthia had sold wasn't my farm. It was the decoy, a near-identical plot I had purchased under a shell company 4 years ago, after the first time I caught her poking around my legal folders. That farm she sold for $300,000? It had no irrigation, no barns, no equipment, just weed-infested soil and a crumbling fence line. She sold the decoy, a dummy parcel I kept precisely for scenarios like this. And my real farm? The one worth millions? Still mine. Still untouched. Still locked down tighter than Fort Knox. And Cynthia? She just handed over every dime to her boyfriend. For nothing. The irony of it all hit me like a cold splash of bourbon to the face. She thought she gutted me. She thought she stripped me of everything I'd built with my own hands. But all she did was hand $300,000 of what she thought was my legacy to a half-wit in designer jeans and a dream built on cheap espresso and crypto buzzwords. I sat in my truck for a while, engine idling, watching that neglected strip of land she'd sold. Thistles growing taller than fence posts. The gate hanging on one hinge. Not even the deer bothered passing through here anymore. It was a graveyard of potential, and she passed it off like she struck gold. She always did think perception was more important than substance. The irony was poetic. I cracked a smile. Not because I wasn't angry, I was. I was furious. But I was also in control. I had the upper hand, and she didn't even know it yet. See, years ago, when I started sensing something off, little things, like her sudden interest in financial terms she'd never used before, or the way she'd ask about deed titles while pretending to make small talk, I talked to my lawyer, set up a trust, transferred the main farm, my land, into a holding company under my cousin's name. The decoy? That was in my name. On paper, it looked like the crown jewel. It was bait, and she took it. Hook, line, greedy little sinker. I pulled up my phone and called Henry, my lawyer. He answered on the first ring. You back already? Yeah, I said, and I need you to prep a file. I want you to send Cynthia a copy of the sale contract with the real estate disclosure highlighted. Henry chuckled. The one that says the well's dry, the soil's unfit for AG use, and the property's under review for environmental cleanup? That's the one, I said, smiling through gritted teeth. Let's see how Marcus's little empire holds up when his foundation is a swamp full of mercury and bad decisions. Want me to send it to Marcus too? Not yet. Let them stew a little. I want her to think she won. Let him get comfy with his gift. Then we pull the rug. I hung up and drove to the real farm. You ever seen peace? Mine's got rows of green stretching farther than the eye can see. Barn stocked. Solar panels humming on the roof. Horses grazing like they own the place. It was everything Cynthia thought she sold, and none of it touched. I stood there, boots in the dirt, and for the first time in days, I felt something rare, clarity. The kind that only comes when a man's been blindsided, bloodied, but still standing, still fighting. Cynthia thought this was over, but I was just getting started. That night, I checked into the guest house on the far end of the farm, the one she never bothered to visit because it smelled like hay. I poured myself a drink and scrolled through her social media. She posted a photo. A champagne glass. Caption: New beginnings, dizzy, #gratitude, #love and growth. I smiled. Oh, honey, you have no idea what's coming. I slept like a soldier that night, light, ears tuned to every sound, but a rifle's calm inside my head. I hadn't felt that kind of control in years. Not since before Cynthia started playing puppeteer with my time, my patience, and eventually my trust. When I woke up, I made eggs. Real ones. The kind she used to complain about too much cholesterol, she'd say, sipping some green liquid sludge that smelled like regret. Cynthia always liked control, but not the kind earned by grit and sweat. No, she wanted the kind that came from mirrors and seduction, from manipulation dressed up as charm. Now she thought she owned the game. She had no idea she was just a pawn on a board I'd already carved with my own knife. I spent the morning going over the file Henry sent me, a full breakdown of the farm she sold. There it was, in black and white. Appraised value, $310,000, barely. Water rights, none. Soil toxicity, high, thanks to an abandoned mine runoff in the 80s. Agricultural viability, low to non-existent. Zoning, pending environmental review and potential restriction. Basically, Marcus just bought a 200-acre liability disguised as a dream. The cherry on top? He used his name on the purchase contract. Cynthia had sold it on my behalf, forged the signature, and funneled the money straight to him. Which meant, legally, she committed fraud. And so did he. Henry was already prepping the civil suit, but I wasn't about to tip that hand yet. Not until they danced a little longer. I drove into town later that afternoon, walked into the local cafe, and saw her. Cynthia. Wearing her signature, "I'm better than you" sunglasses indoors, laughing at something on her phone. She didn't see me. I didn't make a scene. No. I ordered coffee and sat at the corner table by the window, phone in hand, pretending not to care. She walked out 5 minutes later, swinging her hips like she was starring in her own private movie. Her phone buzzed. I knew the tone. Marcus. Curious, I thought. Let's see what her lover boy's up to. I didn't have to wait long. Marcus had opened a wellness collective in a strip mall 30 miles out, a place filled with crystal energy, pyramid schemes, and overpriced oat milk. I drove out, parked across the lot, and watched from the tinted window of my truck. The sign outside read, "Ascend and Thrive, a visionary space for entrepreneurs and lightworkers. God help us." Through the front window, I saw Marcus pacing, talking to a customer, or maybe an investor. Who knows? The man wore a linen shirt, 3 buttons open, chest hair proudly on display like it was a business credential. That was Marcus, all surface, no engine. I sent Henry a text. Start tracking business registration, tax ID, and funding sources. Look for where the $300,000 landed. Make it quiet. Henry responded in seconds. Already ahead of you. Registered in Cynthia's name, not his. I smiled. Of course it was. She wasn't just blind, she was dumb. She tied herself to a scam artist, gave him everything, and now she was on the legal hook. I sat back in the truck, the late afternoon sun bleeding through the windshield. It wasn't revenge I was after, not yet. It was revelation. The truth always finds a way to rise, like oil slick on still water. They wanted to build something on the bones of my name? Let them. Let them build their glass castle on that poison land. Because soon, everything would come crashing down, and I wouldn't have to lift a finger. 2 days passed. I kept quiet. Kept still. The kind of still a man gets right before pulling a trigger, not of a gun, but of a plan. A plan layered in patience and built from the rubble of trust. Henry called on the 3rd morning. She's listed as the majority stakeholder. he said without needing context. 85% of the business's capital came from the farm sale. The account the money went through? A joint one you never approved. Of course it was. Her name was on the decoy's deed, but the sale still required both our signatures. She forged mine, banked the money, and dumped it into a glorified yoga cult. And Marcus? He put in $5,000 and a vision board. That's not all, Henry continued. She leveraged the remaining farm equipment as collateral for a personal loan. Under your name. That's when my jaw clenched. Now it was war. See, Cynthia had gotten greedy. Sloppy. And when greedy people feel safe, they stop checking the locks. What she didn't know, what she never knew, was that the equipment lease she leveraged wasn't connected to the real farm at all. It was junk, outdated, rusted, and deliberately stored on the decoy plot for insurance purposes. Meaning, the bank would seize garbage and think they were settling a debt. I paced the porch of the guest house, staring out at the real fields, the golden light of morning spilling across rows of soy and sorghum like God himself was blessing my revenge. I made some calls of my own, quiet calls. Friends I trusted. Men who worked the land with me. Mechanics. Surveyors. Even one guy from the county records office I once pulled out of a ditch in a snowstorm. All of them. Loyal. All of them. Willing. The net was forming. But while the trap was being laid, I wanted to see her. Not as a man torn apart, but as the one rebuilding with nails made of truth. So I showed up at her house. She opened the door, wearing a silk robe that probably cost more than our first month of groceries when we were newlyweds. Hair done, lips red, but her eyes, there was something frantic underneath. She wasn't as in control as she thought. Back already? She asked, feigning surprise. Had to cut paradise short. You know how it is, I said, stepping inside without waiting. She tensed. I could smell it on her. Fear, barely veiled by Chanel. You didn't call, she said, voice cold. I figured you'd be busy spending my family's legacy on a guy who sells moon water and incense sticks. She flinched. Good. I walked past her into the kitchen. She followed, arms crossed. If you came here to throw blame. I turned. Slowly. Calm as a snake in the grass. Blame? Cynthia, I'm not angry. She blinked. I'm impressed, I said flatly. You really went for it. Burned every bridge for a man who thinks chakras are a business model. You stole. You forged. You committed fraud. She tried to recover. I didn't come to fight. I came to give you one last out. What are you talking about? I pulled a folder from my coat, laid it on the table. Inside, photos of the land she sold, appraisals, toxicity reports, a copy of the forged signature, mine, blown up 200%. And last but not least, a bank notice about her equipment loan, with a photo of the busted tractor it secured. I suggest you read that carefully. She stared at it, then back at me. Her hands shook. You think you can scare me with this? I talked to Marcus's lawyer. You mean the guy who has a degree from a non-accredited Caribbean school and a Yelp page with 1 star? Silence. I leaned in. Cynthia, this isn't a game anymore. You broke the law. You embarrassed yourself. And the only reason I'm not pressing charges, yet, is because I want you to see how deep the hole is before you beg for a ladder. Her face twisted. Anger. Fear. Pride. She opened her mouth. But I held up a hand. I'm not finished. I've got 24 affidavits coming in from people who can confirm what you did. Video of the notary you bribed. Text messages Marcus sent bragging about fleecing you. Then I smiled. And I haven't even gone to the press yet. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You wouldn't. I tilted my head. Wouldn't I? She didn't say a word. Not right away. She just stood there, clutching the folder like it might catch fire in her hands. Her face had gone pale. Not the kind of pale from guilt. No, this was survival mode pale. The color of someone who finally realized the parachute they packed was full of holes. I didn't gloat. That wasn't the point. I walked over to the sink, poured myself a glass of water, and waited while she read. She finally spoke. You planned this. No, I said calmly, but I prepared for it. That's the difference between us. Her hand trembled as she flipped through the pages. The soil's contaminated? She asked, eyes darting across the environmental report. Has been for 30 years. You'd know that if you ever listened when I talked about the land. But Marcus, I said, cutting her off, is about to learn that no amount of kombucha can fix a lawsuit. And you? You just gifted him the legal equivalent of a landmine. Her shoulders slumped. robe slipping slightly off one side. A fitting image, really, her whole illusion unraveling stitch by stitch. I leaned against the counter. You still don't get it, do you? She looked up, hollow-eyed. You didn't just steal from me. You stole from my father, from his father before him. That land was passed down through grit, sweat, and hands that bled for it. You took it like it was a purse from Nordstrom. I thought. No, I snapped. You didn't think. You schemed. You lied. And now the only thing you actually managed to sell is your credibility. She sat down, slow, like gravity had gotten heavier. I can fix this, she whispered. I can talk to Marcus. You can't fix this with a conversation, I said. This isn't about your ego anymore. It's about legal consequences. Then I let the next bomb drop. You've got 48 hours to transfer Marcus's business assets back into my possession. Her head snapped up. What? You used stolen funds to start it. That means the entity itself was fraudulently funded. And thanks to the idiot signing everything in your name, I now have the right to recover losses, including interest. The only reason I'm not handing this over to law enforcement right now is because I want every asset on the table first. You're bluffing. Henry sent the cease and desist 30 minutes ago. Marcus should be reading it, right? About now. She lunged for her phone. Dialed. No answer. Tried again. Still nothing. I checked my watch. He's not picking up, I said. Maybe he's too busy trying to figure out why a county inspector just showed up with a hazmat crew and a drone. Cynthia looked like she might vomit. I stepped closer, voice low. This is the part where you learn the cost of betrayal. Not in screaming matches or slashed tires, but in court filings, frozen accounts, and the slow, methodical erasure of your new life. You really want to ruin me? No, I said. You already did that to yourself. Then I turned toward the door. She called out behind me. What are you going to do? I paused. Whatever I want, I said without looking back. I didn't go back to the guest house that night. I parked outside the Ascend and Thrive strip mall temple Marcus had christened with Cynthia's money. The neon glow of his sign flickered slightly fitting, given the structural collapse that was already underway beneath his smug little empire. I didn't need to go inside. I wasn't there to make a scene. I was there to observe. To watch the man who sold my wife a fantasy stumble headfirst into reality. He showed up around 10 p.m., pulling into the lot in his leased Audi, all swagger and zero spine. He stepped out holding an iced matcha and talking loudly on the phone like someone who thought volume was power. I could practically hear the panic in his voice, though. It had started to crack around the edges. Words like lawsuit, compliance, and financial review don't roll off the tongue as easily as vision board and spiritual dividends. He went inside. I waited. An hour later, he came back out, but this time he was alone and moving slower, like a man who'd just been gut-punched by reality. I took a picture from the truck, not for court, just for me. A souvenir. By the time I got back to the guest house, Henry had emailed me the first draft of the asset recovery claim. It was tight, brutal, even. Everything Marcus had tried to build, using my stolen wealth, was about to be seized, audited, or sued into non-existence. I replied with one line, proceed. The next morning, I made my rounds. Not as the betrayed husband, but as the landowner. The real one. The men who worked my fields, the ones who'd stuck with me when the harvest was lean, were still showing up at dawn. Loyal. No questions asked. I walked the rows with Davis, my foreman. He's got hands like rough oak and a nose for bullshit. You good, boss? He asked. I gave a small nod. Better than her boyfriend. Davis chuckled. He the one who looks like a yoga mat grew legs and got a credit card? That's the one. We walked in silence after that. The kind of silence men keep when respect is mutual and words don't add value. The truth is, I wasn't just reclaiming land or money, I was reclaiming myself. Piece by piece. After the field checks, I stopped by the county office. My friend Lisa at the clerk's desk gave me a look when I walked in. We got quite the visit this morning, she said. Marcus? I asked. Oh yeah. Came in red in the face, yelling about bogus inspections and how his energy center wasn't a toxic waste zone. I laughed. What did you tell him? I told him to call the EPA. She slid a manila envelope across the counter. Copies of everything you requested. Property zoning, environmental filings, even the 911 call log from the contractor who flagged the land years ago. I flipped through it. Gold. Every document and nail in the coffin he didn't know he was lying in yet. Thanks, Lisa. She winked. Next time pick a woman who doesn't use fraud as a love language. As I walked out, I spotted a familiar car pulling into the parking lot Cynthia's. She saw me. I didn't stop. I just tipped my hat as I passed, watching her expression change from fury to desperation in 2 seconds flat. She followed me back to my truck. "You're not giving me a chance to fix this," she said. "You already fixed it for me," I replied, climbing in. "You made it easy to walk away." Her voice cracked. "You can't just erase 7 years." "No," I said, turning the engine. "But I can sure as hell make them irrelevant." Then I pulled out, gravel crunching beneath my tires, and left her standing in the dust. The thing about snakes like Marcus? They're not built for the long game. They slither through loopholes, hiss sweet nothings at investors, and wrap around gullible egos like vines choking a fence post. But put heat under them, real legal, financial, and reputational heat, and they start to writhe. By the following week, Marcus was flailing. Henry forwarded me a cease and desist letter from Marcus's lawyer, a glorified paralegal operating out of a co-working space 2 towns over. It was full of legal jargon stapled together like duct tape on a sinking ship. The kind of nonsense meant to scare someone who doesn't know the rules. Problem was, I wrote the rulebook. I replied through Henry with a 37-page document, affidavits, property assessments, fraud evidence, the works. Marcus didn't respond, but his Instagram did. The page 4, Ascend and Thrive, went from daily posts about manifesting abundance and vibrational entrepreneurship to a 3-sentence post in black and white. "We are temporarily pausing operations due to unforeseen regulatory issues. We'll return stronger, guided by the universe and legal clarity. Crescent Moon." Legal clarity? Sweetheart, you're about to manifest bankruptcy. And Cynthia? Well, her descent was even messier. She tried calling every night. Texts, emails, guilt grenades like. I didn't mean for this to happen. Marcus lied to me too. We can fix this if we just talk. I ignored them all. Because I didn't need closure. I didn't need apologies. I needed her to feel it. Every minute. Every dollar. Every lie. I did, however, send her one message. Just one. It was a photo of the real farm. The good land. Healthy crops in perfect rows, red barn glowing at sunrise, horses grazing peacefully. The caption? Still mine. Always was. She didn't respond after that. Not directly. But 2 days later, she showed up at Henry's office. I wasn't there. Didn't need to be. Henry said she came in looking like hell warmed over. Hair pulled back like she hadn't slept, makeup cracked from tears she tried to wipe away before walking in. She sat down, hand shaking, and said 3 words. "I need help." Henry kept it cold. "You need a lawyer. I'm not yours anymore." She tried to explain, to spin, to soften. But Henry's a warhorse. He's seen women like Cynthia before. Hell, he probably divorced one. He handed her a folder. "This is your reality now," he said. "I suggest you face it." Inside were the initial civil filings, asset forfeiture, loan default notices, impending IRS audit alerts tied to Marcus's business deductions. Oh, and a draft of the fraud complaint that would automatically trigger if she failed to comply with court-mandated reparations. She left without another word. Later that evening, I poured myself a whiskey and walked the real farm. The sky above was clear, silent. The stars didn't mock, they bore witness. The land was mine, my legacy intact, my dignity restored. You'd think I'd feel satisfied. But the funny thing about betrayal? It doesn't end with the collapse. It ends when they have to live in what they built. The morning it hit the local paper, I was already halfway through my 2nd cup of black coffee, sitting on the porch overlooking the only farm that mattered. The sun was just peeking up over the tree line, but my phone buzzed like it was noon in Times Square. Front page. Business section. Big, bold letters. Wellness startup under investigation for fraudulent funding, local businessman implicated in land scheme. And just like that, Marcus wasn't just a wannabe mogul anymore. He was news. The article, written by a pit bull of a journalist I tipped off with a neat little package of verified documents, didn't hold back. It detailed the toxic land he'd purchased for development, the forged signature on the sale, the funds illegally transferred from a joint account, his complete lack of ownership on the property he bragged about in all those Instagram building my dream reels. And there, midway through the 2nd column, was the clincher. According to legal filings obtained by this paper, the property at the center of this scandal was misrepresented in value and viability. The rightful landowner, who asked not to be named for legal reasons, is pursuing damages. I didn't need to be named. Everyone in this town already knew. And they were talking. Later that day, I went into town for supplies, real subtle like. Just a trip to the feed store. But every head turned. Nods. Smirks. One old-timer named Ralph tipped his hat and said, "Heard your land grew more than crops this year." I smiled. It's harvest season. Meanwhile, Marcus? He went dark. Instagram deleted. Website offline. Word around town was that he tried to host a healing circle the day after the article dropped, and not a single person showed up, not even Cynthia. And speaking of her, she was unraveling. Henry forwarded me a report from his investigator. Turns out, Marcus had another woman on the side. Some yoga instructor in Santa Fe. Cynthia had no idea. Apparently, the day the paper dropped, she drove to Marcus's studio, found him drunk, and screaming into his laptop about character assassination and bad vibrations. When she confronted him, he threw her under the bus, claimed she forged the signature, called her unstable, even blamed her for the IRS audit. She slapped him across the face, packed a bag, and left. But she didn't go home. She showed up on my land. Now that took guts. I was in the barn, tightening a hydraulic line on the combine when I heard the unmistakable crunch of tires on gravel. I stepped outside, wiping grease from my hands, and there she was, standing in front of her Lexus, looking like a magazine cover thrown in the washing machine. Her makeup was streaked, hair messy, but her eyes? They were clear. "I need to talk to you," she said. I crossed my arms. "Now you want to talk?" She didn't try to hug, didn't try to cry. She just walked over and stood in front of me, arms limp. I lost everything. I raised an eyebrow. "No, you traded everything. And badly." "I was stupid," she said. "You were selfish." Silence. I should have known he was using me. I stared at her for a long moment, then said, "You didn't care." Her eyes glistened. But I didn't offer her a tissue. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Not enough," I said. Then I stepped around her, walked back to my equipment, and left her standing there between the ghosts of what she tried to steal and the monument of what she never understood. By the time Cynthia's Lexus finally rolled off my land, slow, heavy, like it was carrying the weight of every mistake she swore she'd never make, the storm had already moved online. It started with a Reddit thread. A user claiming to be an intern turned whistleblower at a Sind and Thrive posted a bombshell exposed titled, "I worked at a wellness startup, funded by fraud. Ask me anything." It blew up. Screenshots of Marcus's ridiculous staff emails started flooding the comments. Things like, "If you don't believe in aura audits, maybe this isn't the career for you. The energy of the building is compromised. Let's burn sage before signing tax documents." People laughed. Then they got angry. Then they dug. The internet's not kind to frauds, especially ones who post motivational reels next to quotes they barely understand. One TikTok creator stitched Marcus's old video, him shirtless on a balcony, claiming he manifested his empire through a lined feminine capital, with the headline from the local paper. For 0.7 million views in 12 hours. By the end of the day, #fraudulent frequency was trending. And it wasn't just Marcus taking hits. Cynthia's name started floating up in the dirt. A few wedding vendors she stiffed on the deposit spoke out. Old acquaintances popped up with stories of how she always acted like she was auditioning for a trophy wife reality show. She went from silent luxury to public liability. And me? I sat on my porch, drank a cold beer, and read every post with calm detachment, like a man watching the weeds pull themselves out of the ground and throw a fit on the sidewalk. Henry called around noon. "You seeing the news?" "Which part?" I asked. The IRS freezing Marcus's accounts or the influencer girl he ghosted posting screenshots of him begging for one last chance to cleanse his masculine shame? Henry barked out a laugh. "Both. But there's more. Marcus tried to file a restraining order against you." I blinked. "For what?" "For emotional intimidation. Says you weaponized community perception against him." I nearly dropped the phone laughing. "You filing a response?" "Already sent a statement to the judge along with a copy of his public threats to burn down your karmic lineage. Should be tossed by Monday." God, the internet was a beautiful disaster sometimes. Later that night, I heard from Emily, Cynthia's younger sister, the one who used to call me the only normal one in the family. She sent me a message on Facebook. "I don't know what's happening between you two, but I just want to say, I always thought she didn't deserve you." I didn't reply, not because I didn't appreciate it, but because there was nothing left to say. This wasn't about deserving anymore. This was about reality. Cynthia had built her house on a fantasy. And now, plank by plank, that house was burning. The internet moves fast. One day you're sipping turmeric lattes on a yoga mat, preaching about moon cycles. The next, you're a meme. Marcus had officially reached meme status. A video clip surfaced from a podcast he'd recorded just weeks before everything imploded. He'd been mid-ramble about redefining masculinity through energetic vulnerability when he confidently declared, "You don't need money to be rich. You just need alignment." It cut hard to a photo of him sitting on a folding chair in front of his shuttered studio, eviction notice duct taped to the glass behind him. Caption: "Alignment's expensive, bro." It had over 10 million views by nightfall. I'd be lying if I said I didn't chuckle. But while Marcus was busy tanking his personal brand into the abyss, Cynthia had gone radio silent. No more texts. No more voicemails. Just nothing. I figured she was licking her wounds somewhere upscale, maybe trying to find a lawyer who could untangle her from the mess she helped weave. Turns out, I wasn't far off. Henry gave me the update that afternoon. She's retained counsel. Divorce papers are incoming. I nodded, standing by the back gate, watching the sun hit the soybeans just right. She's trying to protect anything left? She's scrambling. Her lawyer's asking for a sit-down. Let them wait. But Henry hesitated. She asked for a private meeting. Not legal. Just a conversation. That got my attention. Where? She said you'd know. Something about the fence post and the apple tree. I nearly laughed. Of course. The fence post, my fence post, where I carved our initials the night I proposed. The same tree she used to sit under with lemonade and a journal, back before ambition swallowed her whole. I didn't agree to the meeting for closure. I agreed to see what kind of person she'd become in the wreckage. That evening, I walked down to the tree. The sky was gray, the air heavy, like the land knew what was coming. She was already there, standing in flats in a long beige coat, arms folded tight. "You came," she said softly. "Curious," I said. "Not hopeful." She didn't respond right away. Just looked at the fence post. Our initials were still there, carved deep, weather-worn but visible. "I messed up," she finally said. "You think?" She took a breath. "I thought I was building something new, something exciting. You were building a lie. I know that now." Her voice cracked. "I lost everything. You threw it away." Her jaw tensed, but she didn't deny it. Then, a question I never expected. "Was any of it real to you?" I studied her. The way the wind caught the edges of her coat, the hair she used to spend an hour curling now tucked into a messy bun. "I loved you," I said, flatly. "But I learned the hard way that love means nothing if it's not respected." Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't flinch. "I'll sign the papers," she whispered. "No fight. No settlement. You keep the land. Everything." I raised an eyebrow. "Just like that. There's nothing left worth pretending for." We stood in silence. Just wind and distant crows. "You know what the hardest part is," she said finally. I waited. I thought Marcus saw me. I thought I mattered. That stung. Not for her. For me. Because once, I had made her feel seen. I built a life around her, handed her everything I had, and in the end, she still wanted more. Still thought validation from a stranger was worth more than loyalty from a man who showed up every single day. "You mattered," I said quietly. "Right up until the moment you made me disposable." She nodded. We didn't say goodbye. There was nothing left to cut. Only ashes now. And ashes don't wave. The papers arrived on a Tuesday, neatly bound. No red ink. No hidden clauses. Just signatures, hers, mine, and two witnesses who probably didn't know the story behind the ink they were watching bleed onto the page. I didn't pause. I didn't flinch. I signed with the same calm I used to cut through cornrows at sunrise. That night, I burned the envelope it came in. Not the papers, no. Those went to Henry, filed and final. But the envelope? The carrier? That got the fire. Because sometimes, it's not about the big moments. It's about the little ones, the rituals that let you close a door and never look back. I watched the paper curl in the flames, ember by ember, until all that was left was ash. Again, seems ash followed Cynthia wherever she went. But here's the thing. Ashes are cold. The fire's what you watch for. And while she thought everything had cooled, she forgot one simple truth. Reputation smolder longer than whatever could. The wellness scandal wasn't just a local punchline anymore. It had gone national. A business podcast picked it up, titled the episode, "Burnout and Betrayal: How Fake Gurus Tank Real Lives." They dragged Marcus by name, the guy who spiritualized embezzlement. But then came the kicker. They named her, too. Not with malice. Just facts. Cynthia, majority investor. Cynthia, listed as co-director. Cynthia, responsible for false financials submitted for tax relief grants. Turns out, Marcus had been applying for pandemic business relief funds under false pretenses. And since her name was on the filings, guess who the Department of Justice was suddenly very interested in? She called Henry, begged him to speak to me, said she never knew what Marcus was doing, that she just signed where he pointed. Henry told her, politely but firmly, that ignorance wasn't a legal defense. I didn't laugh when I heard it. I didn't feel smug or vindicated. I felt done. Cynthia had dug herself a hole so deep the only thing left above ground was her last name, and even that was now mine alone. Later that week, I drove past Town Square. The cafe she used to love had taken her signature drink off the chalkboard, replaced the Cynthia with the lesson. Same ingredients, different name. That told me everything. People weren't just forgetting her. They were rewriting her. And Marcus? Last I heard, he was couch surfing in Austin, trying to rebrand as a freelance breath coach. His new website featured a lot of shirtless photos, a quote from Gandhi that Gandhi never said, and one single testimonial from a guy named Skylar the Crystal Wolf. A fitting end for a man who tried to build his kingdom on my land, my wife, and my back. But I didn't dwell on him anymore. I'd already tilled the soil where his ego rotted. I focused on the farm, the air, the rhythm, the one place that never lied to me. Crops don't cheat. Seasons don't betray. And land. Land remembers who tended it. It was early spring when I got the letter. No return address. Handwritten. I stood at the edge of the porch, boots damp from the morning dew, the envelope warm from the sun that had just started stretching its arms over the hills. I didn't open it right away. Something about the slant of the cursive on the front told me what I already knew. It was from her. Cynthia. I should have thrown it in the fire pit. Should have tossed it to the wind like a man done with dead weight. But part of me needed to read it. I opened it. I know you hate me. I don't blame you. You were the best man I've ever known, and I let my greed talk louder than your love. I've lost everything. Not just the money or the house or the image I clung to, but the version of myself I once was when I stood next to you. I miss her, and I miss the man who believed in me more than I ever did. I'm facing charges now. Marcus ghosted. Of course he did. I've spent the last few months living with my sister, trying to figure out what the hell I am without status or followers or curated brunches. Turns out, I'm nothing. But I was someone with you. I won't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I will ask for one thing. Please don't forget the woman I was before all this. I read the letter once. Just once. Then I folded it, lit a match, and watched it vanish like all the other illusions she'd tried to sell me. The smoke curled upward like her words trying to hang on. But the wind doesn't keep lies. It scatters them. A few days later, I ran into her sister Emily at the hardware store. She was buying gardening gloves. Told me Cynthia had moved out. She's trying to start over, Emily said, sarcasm wrapped around sympathy. Thinks she'll open some kind of nonprofit for women who've lost everything. I raised an eyebrow. She doesn't get it, does she? I said. Emily shook her head. She still thinks redemption is a brand. I left it at that. Back at the farm, the land was waking up. Seeds I'd planted before the divorce had taken root, literal and metaphorical. My new greenhouse was nearly done. The solar irrigation system was ahead of schedule, and I'd hired 3 new hands. Young guys, strong backs, honest eyes. The kind of crew you build a future with. One afternoon, I stood at the edge of the south field and looked out across everything Cynthia never understood. She thought success came from looking the part. I knew better. It comes from putting your hands in the dirt, over and over, until something real grows.